First up, though, let's talk about whether or not the party is over for the Prime Minister. Today he has to face questions from Sir Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, finally today out of isolation after suffering from COVID for the second time. He'll be at the dispatch box with 6 questions at midday. I imagine the first one will be, did you attend that party on the 20th of May 2020? Well, yesterday his deputy, Angela Rayner, had an urgent question in the House of Commons about this very topic. And I'm delighted to say she joins us here on Talk Radio right now. Good morning to you, Angela.
Good morning, Julia. I hope no one's kissing me today, by the way.
Well, I'm going to ask you about that at the end of this show. It's got to be done as a well-known ginger. It's got to be done. Let's talk about where the Prime Minister is. We've got revelation after revelation of the last few months of a number of parties. I don't know when, frankly, Number 10 staff were not rewarding themselves after a hard day's work with another party. We had them at Christmas 2020. We had one on the 15th of May. We had that wine and cheese party. We've seen photos of that. This is about the 20th of May. This involves an email trail, 100 people invited to enjoy the lovely weather on the same day. The leading member of the government at the time, Oliver Dowden, was telling people just a few yards away, an hour earlier, we could only meet one other person out of our household outdoors at a time and not in a private garden. And yet 30 or 40 people and the Prime Minister's staff, we believe, including the Prime Minister, attended a bring your own booze party. Can the Prime Minister survive this, or do you think the party's over for him?
I think the party's well and truly over for him. I think, over the last couple of days, people have been utterly upset and devastated by the news, because the Prime Minister over the last couple of days could have, quite frankly, answered this question very simply. Was you at a party during the lockdown and the restrictions when you knew you shouldn't have been? Yes or no? He didn't need an investigation. He doesn't need the police to tell him that. He could make that assumption. And, this is in the context of the day when over 200 NHS workers died of COVID, on the front line looking after our country. And if the Prime Minister was partying in Number 10, I think it's unforgivable. I think the public will not forgive him for that.
And we've seen the polls. One poll suggesting 66% of people think he should go. That will include an awful lot of people who voted Boris into power in December 2019. And we heard some extraordinary stories from MPs on the backbenches yesterday. Notable, by the way, that we didn't have any cabinet ministers, any ministers turning up to back the Prime Minister, as, of course, the Paymaster General, Michael Ellis, who many my listeners will be saying, was sent out to bat for the Prime Minister, but without any proper answers to give. But MPs talking about how, one MP saying he had to sit in the car park outside the hospital where his own mother was dying, but wanting to be close. We had to, another man talking about breaking down in tears, talking about his mother-in-law having to die alone. We will all have our stories to tell. I remember saying, I was talked on air May the 20th last year. It was the first time I saw my mother for the first time during COVID. She lives on her own, late 70s. We were outside. I didn't hug her. She was really upset with me because I wouldn't hug her, because I was so worried that I'd come from London and I'd be bringing the virus. And yet here were these 30 or 40 people enjoying booze and goodness knows what at a party. The anger from the public is palpable right now. But Boris Johnson has escaped a lot worse over the years. He is the Teflon politician. We seem to just write off all of his indiscretions and proven lies and problems over the years. Why do you think this is the time that actually the party is over and that it's all going to catch up with him?
Because I think, as you've quite articulately put, many people are triggered by what was a very difficult time for them. People are still grieving their loved ones who they didn't get to say goodbye to. And there's a lot of trauma around at the moment still from that time. And for the Prime Minister to be partying at a time when hundreds of people died, I mean, it's just completely beggars belief that would be the case. But then for the last couple of weeks, to be saying he understands the frustration of the public. He wasn't at any parties. He didn't know about any parties. We want an investigation into this. I mean, I've even seen smirk on his face that says, I've not broken any COVID rules. So for him now to be in a situation where for the last couple of days, he won't even answer yes or no, was you at this party during the restrictions? And I think people have already made their conclusion on that. The fact that he can't even answer that simple question. And the minister tried to hide behind civil servants yesterday, said, will there be an investigation? We don't need an investigation into the Prime Minister saying whether he was at a party or not. I know I wasn't at any parties during that period. I'm sure you know whether you were at a party or not during the lockdown. So why is it that the Prime Minister is refusing to answer that question? So I think people are starting to see that he's treating them with contempt. And at a time when they made so many sacrifices and are still feeling the pain of that, I don't think he can survive this. And I think MPs in the Conservative Party are incredibly frustrated now. Well, they've got a job to do now because they are the ones that can remove Boris Johnson, and they have the obligation to the British public, who they told as their constituents, follow the rules. If you don't follow the rules, you'll be fined, you'll be dealt with by the police. They have an obligation now to uphold that within their own Prime Minister, and if he hasn't followed the rules, he has broken them, they have to remove him from office.
Well, I mean, there's the anger on the Tory benches is palpable. There's no question at all about that. Among cabinet ministers and among backbench MPs, those who've supported him throughout and those who've been very critical of policy, there are still a lot of people. And there's an interesting article I read yesterday saying, look, be careful what you wish for. There'll be a lot of people who say they're really angry at the Prime Minister. They think what they did was wrong, but they're worried that if they got rid of him, they might end up with a leader who'd be happier to go into more restrictions or lockdowns. Michael Gove would be a big concern for a lot of people. Also concerned that they'll lose their vote winner in Boris Johnson and would end up with an election, and Sir Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner would be in power, and they think, frankly, that would be even worse. What would you say to those people?
Well, I'm very clear that I think Keir Starmer would be a better Prime Minister. But the point here is you cannot be Prime Minister of this country regardless of your political persuasion if you break the law and you lie to the British public. We can't have that situation. So what is worse than a liar, a cheat, and somebody who has not followed the law that he implemented and told people they had to do? So he's created a very low bar, if I'm quite honest with you, even by anyone's standards. So I just cannot see how we can continue with a Prime Minister who thinks that he's above the law, who thinks it's one rule for him and one rule for everybody else. He's broken the rules in every elected position he's ever held in office, but this one is critical. And at a time when people sacrifice so much, it's unforgivable. And I think the Conservatives know that. I appreciate what you say, Julia. I think there is many Conservative MPs who are absolutely disgusted by this, and they have the power to do something about it, and they need to do that.
Okay. Just finally, because Starmer apparently has done his day 7 negative lateral flow test after a day 6 lateral flow test, and it was negative yesterday, which means he's allowed out of his COVID isolation. He's going to be back at the dispatch box today. You did a valiant job at the asking your urgent question this week, and indeed PMQs last week. Are you gutted you're not going to be able to question the Prime Minister today?
I always enjoy an outing at the dispatch box. It's one of my favourite parts of being an MP, as alongside doing my constituency work, as people can see. But I'll be there whooping Keir on and hoping that he's able to land those blows, which I'm sure he will, for the British public, because Keir will speak for all of the British public, I think, today when he quizzes the Prime Minister on what he's been up to. Just
finally, I mentioned it at the start. Up next, we're going to be talking about today, January the 12th, every year. Apparently, this is all very glib. I realise this, people, but it is Kiss a Ginger Day. I kid you not. I didn't know there was such a thing. I'm married to a ginger myself, so don't accuse me of
Julia,
gingerism.
How did you not know if you're married to a ginger? It came about because they used to have this thing that was called Kick a Ginger Day, which is terrible. Wow. And then they came up with this alternative as Kiss a Ginger Day. But at the moment, I think kicking or kissing a ginger is probably not a good idea, especially if you're not from the same household. So you can just blow me one if you want. That's fine. That's enough for me to feel the love today.
that sounded even worse, if you don't mind me saying. But there we are. Angela Rayner, appreciate you joining us, Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. Thank you very much indeed. I tried to go on a glib topic at the end, but it's got to be mentioned. But let's talk about that now with Mark Crouch. He's founder of the 2% Club, representing an online community of the 2% of redheads, and they originally met up as an online dating site for redheads. Good morning to you, Mark.
Morning, Julia.
Morning. Again, I hadn't realised that the Kiss a Ginger Day. I'm contractually obliged under my marital situation to kiss a ginger every day. But that's just how it works for me. But I've not tried the kicking thing. But I suppose this has come about really because of incredible amounts of abuse and mockery and discrimination. A lot of people who are redheads have had to endure over the years. Children in school, particularly cruel. But this is basically trying to sort of celebrate people for their hair colour rather than take on that abuse. Is it working?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It actually, as Andrew alluded to, it started as a counterpoint to something called Kick a Ginger Day, which was essentially the result of some people on the internet taking a South Park episode too seriously a few years ago. And a guy in Canada called Derek started the Kiss a Ginger movement as a kind of a clever spin on the same word. And yeah, it has been very positive for a number of years. I would say that throughout the 2010s, it certainly led to a surge of positive interest in redheads. And we started our site originally as a dating site back in 2010 for redheads, and so we kind of jumped on this, and we hosted a few parties in London for the Kiss of Ginger Day event, which did really well. I'd say that the general attitude towards redheads has certainly benefited from it. Yeah,
I think it's massively changed. I mean, let's think about Prince Harry, often dubbed King of the Gingers. He did. I mean, I don't know if it's worked out personality-wise. He certainly did very well. I mean, there are so many famous men and women who are red-headed, and I'm thinking as a heterosexual woman, Damien Lewis, Prince Harry, good-looking people. It's certainly not considered to be a bad thing for them to have been redhead. On the contrary, standing out and looking a little bit different, working for them very well.
Well, actually, that's quite interesting, because what we found with our community, because we actually asked this question quite recently, what's it like in your country being a redhead? And what's been astonishing is the consistency of the experience of being ridiculed as a child, but then being idolized as an adult. I mean, I've experienced some of that. I would suggest it's slightly different for men than women. I would say that the attitude towards redheaded women versus redheaded men is slightly different.
Yeah.
Men get more of the ginger, women get more of the redhead.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, there is still this kind of adulation that comes with it. But at least the bullying dies down as you become a grown up. But one of the points that we try and make is that's all well and good, but the damage is done in childhood.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to try and promote some more positive messaging around red hair that gets into the kind of the vernacular of younger people as well.
Yeah, it's kind of the last acceptable ism, isn't it? You wouldn't be allowed to mock or bully somebody because of them having a different colour skin from you, or being a girl or a boy or disabled or anything. It's quite bizarre, isn't it, that this is that you wouldn't bully someone for being a brunette or blonde. It's quite strange that this is still stuck around. Why do you think it has so long?
Well, I'd say blondes do still get a bit of stick. I mean,
Does
unfortunately, yeah, for the whole dumb blonde thing
Oh,
still
okay.
kind of thing. My mum's a blonde; she still gets a bit of that, but she gives back.
One of my blonde producer, Gabriella, just flicked her hair at me very obviously then.
Yeah, but it's definitely worse for redheads. I think it's just because it's such a rare thing. So when you're a child, you pick up on anything that's very unusual if you're going to be a
Yeah.
bully. And certainly when I was a child, it was if you're fat or you're red hair. And actually, I was both as a kid, so I had double trouble. But I suspect, if I think about it, I think the red hair was slightly more of a target. But I think the reason it still exists is purely that it's no one really does anything about it. People just aren't aware
Yeah.
of the damage it can cause. And even things like Kiss of Ginger, I mean, it's been great, but even that in recent years has started to take a slightly darker tone because people are taking it.
Yeah, we're not inviting people to sexually assault complete strangers in the street. Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, I'm sorry about that, but I'm hoping to end on a happy note. Like I say, I will be kissing a ginger tonight, but only because I am contractually obliged to do so because it's my husband.
I hope you'd want to, surely.
I don't mind it. I don't mind it. Mark Crouch, founder of the 2% Club, on Kiss of Ginger Day. Just thought we'd have a lighter topic for once. 9:47 is the time. Up next, we're going to go back to politics. Will the Prime Minister survive today? Everyone seems to think he will, but is this the beginning of the end for the Prime Minister in terms of what he's got to say over Partygate? We'll talk to our political editor, Peter Cardwell. This is Talk Radio.